Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive.
Always.
So, you sent in this article from Gulf News. It's about Saudi Arabia. Pretty interesting stuff.
Oh, yeah, this one's caught a lot of people's attention, hasn't it?
For sure. Random drug tests for public transport drivers. That's,
A bold move.
it is.
Okay.
What's your take on this?
Well, it's certainly not a small thing they're trying to do, right? Nationwide.
Yeah, it's not like a little pilot program or anything.
Exactly. This is everyone. Truck drivers, bus drivers, taxi drivers, anyone behind the wheel.
Wow. And it's a joint effort, too.
Right. It's not just one agency pushing this. You've got Public Transport Authority, the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Health. It seems like they're really committed to this.
Yeah, making the roads safer.
Exactly. That's their stated goal, improving road safety.
Makes sense. But how do they plan to actually, make that happen?
Well, the article quotes the Federation of Saudi Chambers, and they're backing this campaign.
Interesting. So the business community is on board.
Seems like it. And that's significant, I think, because there are going to be costs involved for businesses to comply with this.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But their support could be crucial.
I think so, especially given how big the Saudi transport network is. Think about the logistics of testing all those drivers across such a large country.
It's mind-boggling.
Right. How are they going to do that?
Good question. Oh, the article also mentioned the reaction on social media. As you can imagine, people have a lot to say.
Yeah, lots of different opinions. It's interesting to see.
For sure. You've got people praising the government for taking action. Some are worried about how it's all going to work.
And of course, some people are making jokes about it. The internet,
Always.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that range of reactions.
It is, isn't it? It shows this isn't just some, dry policy announcement.
It's something people really care about.
Absolutely. And it touches on some pretty sensitive issues. Road safety is important to everyone.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Definitely. This is just the beginning. They're not wasting any time either. The article mentions testing's supposed to start in the next few months.
Oh, wow, so soon.
Yeah, and they've already had a virtual workshop, to get transport companies ready.
And an awareness campaign, too, I think they said.
Yeah, getting the word out.
It's interesting to think about this from the driver's perspective, though. I mean, this is a big change for them.
Yeah, for sure. Imagine you're a driver and you've never had to worry about drug tests.
And suddenly it could happen at any time.
Exactly. That's got to be on your mind.
Yeah, it would definitely change how you approach your job.
Definitely.
And how is this even going to work, practically? I mean, are they going to be, pulling over taxis randomly?
I doubt it. It'd be chaos.
Imagine stopping a bus in the middle of its route.
Yeah, that wouldn't go over well. It makes more sense to focus on, transport hubs.
Oh, like bus depots and truck stops.
Exactly. Maybe even border crossings.
Right, that would be way more efficient. But what happens if a driver fails a test?
Well, the article doesn't say exactly what the penalties are,
Oh, okay.
but there's going to be some kind of consequence.
Yeah, there has to be.
Maybe a suspended license, fines, or even losing your job. It depends how serious it is, I guess.
Makes sense. You got to have a deterrent.
Right. Otherwise, people won't take it seriously.
And I bet the transport companies are going to be under a lot of pressure, too.
Oh, absolutely. They don't want to be responsible for an accident because one of their drivers,
Was using something they shouldn't have been.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to have to make sure their drivers are following the rules.
Which probably means more costs for them and more things to organize.
Exactly. So even though this is all about safety, there's definitely an economic side to this too. How much is this whole program going to cost?
And what happens if drivers lose their jobs because of it? That's a big deal.
It is. And that brings us back to the people, right?
It's easy to forget about that when you're talking about policies and statistics.
Yeah, but this is affecting real people's lives. We saw it in the social media comments, how people are feeling about it.
It's true. Their jobs, their families. It's not just an abstract idea.
No, it's very real. It makes you wonder about the bigger picture, what this says about Saudi Arabia.
Is this a sign of things to come?
Maybe. Maybe it's a sign that they're moving towards a more, controlled kind of environment.
Yeah, prioritizing security above all else.
Which raises all sorts of questions about individual freedom, doesn't it?
It does. Where do you draw the line? When does public safety outweigh personal choice?
Those are tough questions. And they're not just relevant to Saudi Arabia, they're relevant everywhere.
That's so true. It's a global conversation. I'm curious to see how this policy actually plays out, though.
Me too. Will it actually reduce accidents? Will there be unintended consequences?
So many unknowns.
Yeah.
But this Gulf News article is interesting because it's from the UAE, right?
Yeah, a neighboring country, so they're definitely paying attention to this.
It makes you wonder if other countries in the region might follow suit.
I'm sure they are. If Saudi Arabia sees success with this, other countries with similar problems might say, hey, we should try that too.
But there are downsides to consider, right?
Oh, tons. Like we talked about, there are the costs, the logistics, and the ethical questions too.
It's not a simple solution. And for some countries, a program like this might just be too much, too expensive, or too difficult to implement.
Definitely. So yeah, Saudi Arabia has made a bold move, but it remains to be seen whether other countries will follow their lead. It'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Agreed. And we'll be watching closely to see what happens, both in Saudi Arabia and internationally. But now I think it's time to bring it back to our listeners. This whole story, it really makes you think.
Doesn't it? What seems like a simple policy, drug testing drivers.
Right. But it's brought up so many other issues.
Safety, economics, personal freedom. We even talked about the international implications.
Exactly. And it all started with that one article from Gulf News. It's amazing how a single news story can spark such a wide-ranging conversation.
It really is. And it just shows sometimes the more you learn about something.
The more questions you end up with.
Exactly. It's not always about finding all the answers.
It's about thinking critically and really considering the different sides of an issue.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners, what are some of the big takeaways from this deep dive? What should they be thinking about?
Well, for me, one of the biggest things this story highlights is that balance between public safety and individual freedom.
Yeah. Is it ever okay to restrict what people can do, in the name of keeping everyone safe?
Right. And there are no easy answers to that.
It's a tough one, and it's something we're seeing debated all over the world.
It is. Think about surveillance cameras, facial recognition, all those things.
People are worried about their privacy, but also about security.
Exactly. And this Saudi policy, even though it's about road safety, it's part of that bigger conversation.
Yeah, how much are we willing to give up, to feel safe?
It's something we all have to think about.
Another thing that struck me is how interconnected everything is.
Oh, definitely. What happens in one country can have a ripple effect everywhere else.
This Gulf News article, it's from the UAE, so clearly there's interest in the region.
Absolutely. And like we said, other countries might be looking at Saudi Arabia, seeing how this policy works out for them.
It's a reminder that we can't just ignore what's happening in other parts of the world.
Right. It all connects in the end.
So to wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with something to think about.
A little food for thought.
Imagine this kind of policy was being considered in your own country. Random drug tests for drivers.
Where would you stand on that? What factors would influence your opinion?
It's something worth considering and talking about with your friends and family.
Being informed and thinking critically about these issues, it's so important.
Especially in today's world.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.